Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to this lunchtime's panel session, which is on One Health, Connecting Intelligence on the Health of Humans, Animals and Environments. Firstly, just to introduce myself, my name is Professor Maya O'Neill. I'm Professor of Information Security at Queen's University Belfast, and I'm also Director of the Institute of Electronics, Communications and IT, or ECIT. So as part of the Belfast Region City Deal, a £50 million Global Innovation Institute will be created. And this aims to transform the Northern Ireland's digital economy by substantially increasing both the volume and range of digital innovation taking place within the region. There will be a particular focus on driving a digital One Health agenda, and which, as the panel title explains, looks at connecting the intelligence on the health of humans, animals and environments. So the GII will build on the success of ECIT, and it will provide a novel multidisciplinary environment by combining world-leading expertise across cybersecurity, wireless technologies, data science and scalable computing, so the secure connected intelligence piece, alongside internationally recognised excellence in food security and sustainability and the health sciences. So this unique combination of skills with a groundbreaking partnership approach to driving scalable computing solutions in an exciting new physical co-creation environment will make GII a game changer for the region. So the GII also aims to deliver a distinctive programme of research and innovation harnessing these common technical foundations in the One Health sector to stimulate inclusive economic growth. So to discuss this very exciting new initiative, I'd like to welcome our panellists today. So firstly, let me welcome Professor Mark Lawler, who's joining us remotely on our screen here today. So Professor Lawler is Professor of Digital Health and Chair in Translational Cancer Genomics. He is an internationally renowned scientist with over 30 years' experience in cancer research, who is passionate about translating his research for the benefit of patients and society. He was architect of the European Cancer Patients' Bill of Rights, which was launched in 2014, and his recent work on coronavirus and cancer, highlighting how the COVID pandemic may lead to a future cancer epidemic, has received international recognition. So welcome, Mark. Next, we have Professor Nigel Scollin. Professor Scollin is Professor of Animal Science and Director of the Institute for Global Food Security here at Queen's. He's a world-leading expert in animal agriculture and associated supply chains. He's authored or co-authored more than 100 scientific papers. He's a Fellow of the Royal Agricultural Society, and he is a previous Sir John Hammond Award winner. And in May of this year, he was awarded the British Society of Animal Science Recognition Award in celebration of his outstanding contribution to the field of animal science through his commitment to the Society. So welcome, Professor Scollin. And finally, we have Professor Hans van der Endonk, Professor in High Performance and Data Intensive Computing, and he's also Director of the Centre for Data Science and Scalable Computing at ECIT in Queen's. His research interests are in compilers, runtime systems and architectures for parallel systems, with special attention to the programmability of such systems. He's co-authored over 100 papers, and he's received the IBM Belgian Prize for Computer Science in 2000 for his graduation thesis and in 2004 for his PhD dissertation. And his graduation thesis also received the Joseph Plateau Prize from the Alumni Engineers Ghent in 2000. So welcome, Professor van der Endonk. So let me kick off by asking each of the panelists. So obviously you can see that our panelists come from very different disciplines. So I'd like to ask you, first of all, how has each of your fields changed over the last 5 years? And what major breakthrough in your area might the GII deliver for society in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? So maybe let's start with Nigel.
Thank you very much. I have the pleasure of working in the area of food security, which spans agriculture, primary production of food, through to food and the whole food system, how it arrives with us as consumers, as people, and then looking at the engagement between food nutrients and how it impacts on our health and our well-being. And I guess there's one area which I think is central to all of this, Maya, that connects us, and that is the area of data. And we live in an era, and we hear a lot about it. It's a very rich period of data coming in all directions to us. And I think that's the big transformation that's happening. But we don't necessarily know how to handle, how to process that data, how to explore that data to be able to answer, I guess, what I'd call real-world questions. So one of the areas that we're particularly interested in contributing to is the whole space in around the environmental impact of our food production and our food system, if you like. So again, a lot of the footprint of food environmentally is actually to do with the production of food. So it's what happens out on farms, out on the landscape, and so on. So over the next number of years, what I see is we have a lot of data on performance of the production of our animals, of our crops, our plants, our primary production. We have a lot of information, a lot of data, but we want to be able to translate that data into useful knowledge and information that can help us to improve productivity in food, but equally reduce the environmental footprint of food production. So I see data and transformation of data into knowledge being absolutely critical. And I think the GII is going to absolutely transform our ability to be able to function in that space. So it's a really exciting area.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark, what do you think the biggest breakthrough will be?
Yeah, no, thanks, Maya. And Nigel beat me to the punch, because I would have also said data and turning data into intelligence, because that's what we've really seen a revolution in the last 5 years. I'm a geneticist by training, and whereas historically I would have been stuck in a lab doing experiments, running gels, etc., now the work I do is all at the computer. So it's all taking that information. But the important thing, as Nigel highlighted, and the essence of Digital One Health, is turning that information into intelligence that we can use. I'll just give an example of something we've done quite recently in that regard, and it's in relation to COVID and cancer. We were the first in the UK to show the actual indirect impact that the COVID pandemic was happening on cancer services and on cancer patients. And the way we were able to do that was actually to collect data in near real time from hospital trusts across the United Kingdom, including all the hospital trusts here in Northern Ireland, and use that to show, for example, that 7 out of 10 people who had a suspicion of cancer just weren't getting seen quickly enough in relation to see whether they did have a diagnosis or not, and similarly in relation to treatment by chemotherapy. So there's an example of how we were able to take the data but convert it into intelligence that allowed us to highlight the problem, and then we've also been using data then to mitigate that problem and look to find solutions. And that's been really exciting. I think the other thing that's important is people are now more familiar with data because of the COVID pandemic, because we see statistics every day in relation to number of COVID hospitalizations, etc. So in that way, I think there's a learning curve that we're on that's very important, that we need to do that important. Like what I'd be asking and challenging our leaders is to say, if we can get COVID data every day, why can't we get, in my area, cancer data every day? We should be able to do it and use that intelligence to have better prevention, which is really the key we want to do in cancer, but also better diagnosis, better treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic has shown that when we really need to do something, we can get data for it. So you're absolutely right. Okay, so Hans, do you want to give your thoughts on breakthroughs?
Yes, absolutely. So my background is in computer science, high-performance computing, so I'm a little bit the odd one out here. But since Mark is bringing up COVID anyway, imagine this. Imagine a pandemic without computer science. Imagine a pandemic without Zoom. Imagine a pandemic without email. It wouldn't have been very, very nice. So computer science has helped us a lot throughout the past few years. Anyway, when it comes to breakthroughs, so we are seeing an increasing use, an increasing collection of data, not in the past 5 years, but over the past decades. And this is really starting to impinge upon us. So we all are aware that Facebook, for instance, is set out to collect data on us. Google collects data on us. They scrape it from every place they can, and they make money out of it. That's the only thing really that it serves for, is to make money, to sell advertising, to sell other products. So my area is mostly about how can we build systems that can collect this data, build this data, and within that, there's a connotation that we want to do this for good. We don't want to do this to make money. And I think that's where we can make a difference. So within the Center for Data Science and Scalable Computing, we look at scalable computing, which is how do we build systems to collect data, compute, and provide intelligence to domain experts like Nigel and Mark. And on the other hand, we look at the AI systems that underpin that. And within that, it's very important that we are aware of what AI does, how it works, in order that we can build it in a way that is useful and friendly to us. And I think this is where we should be aiming to make a big change, is that we want to have AI that works for the good of people. We can build AI, we can use it, we can do everything we want with it these days to a large extent. But how do we set the targets to how we deploy it? And I think that's where we'll see the change.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you, Hans. Okay, so I have a few questions, maybe a little bit more targeted this time. So maybe I'll start with you, Mark. So looking ahead, do you think Dr. Google will replace Professor Lawler?
Thanks, Maya. I hope not, because otherwise I'll be out of a job. But more seriously, I think it's really important that we look at how do we combine the two, because I think that combining is the better to the sum of the parts, and that's really what we've been looking at over the last number of years and what we continue to look at going forward. As Hans says, we have huge capability now in artificial intelligence. I'm actually hosting a session at the National Cancer Research Institute, which I've provocatively named Throw Out the Stethoscope, the Datascope is here to stay. And I think that's really important, that we realize that data is going to be an important part of how we practice medicine, how we deliver better impact, but also how we actually help people. And I really echo what Hans said in relation to looking at ways in which we can actually use, for example, data to address the inequalities we see in our society, how we can help people, but also how we can develop the value proposition so that everybody benefits. So one of the things, I'm scientific director of DataCan, which is the UK's health data research hub for cancer. And one of the things we're doing is looking into how do we provide fair value, first of all, to the patient, then to the National Health Service, then to the researcher, but also to industry. And it's that bringing of all that together and using data in a robust, effective, but responsible way that really is how we're going to see the benefits of it. The other thing that really galls me is when I see people collecting data and holding it in silos. And that's one of the things we really need to change. We can't have everybody having their own little data silo and working away quietly. Those days are gone. And really, that's why I'm so excited about GII and the opportunities we have, particularly in this One Health space. And myself and Nigel have frequent off-the-wall conversations as to how we're actually going to look at the health of soil, the health of populations, the health of nutrients, etc., in the food chain. So there are a lot of really big challenges to face, but we feel that we have big solutions for these big challenges.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you. Sounds very exciting, and I'm part of it. I'm more excited the more I hear. Okay, so Nigel, turning to you and your area of expertise. So, do you see that a digitalized landscape will materialize to help measure and mitigate environmental matters?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely, I do see it. It's not a short term. This is very much a medium to long term. So I guess what I would see is, imagine a landscape. When you drive out into the countryside and you look at that land and you look at the rivers flowing through it, you look at our coastal areas and so on. Imagine a landscape where you've got data flowing from sensors and other information that can inform us about the health of the soil, the health of the water, the health of the air in which our plants, our grass, our animals, and we are living within. So imagine that instrumented landscape getting that intelligence, getting that information. So once you can measure something, then of course, as we discussed in the last few minutes, translating that information then into knowledge and into intelligence that helps us to make things better for all is what I see. And that fundamentally underpins what our food production and ultimately what our health is about. You know, our health, our well-being is very much influenced by our food, but equally, we all drink water. We're all impacted by the air that we breathe. So imagine an instrumented landscape that can make our health and well-being fundamentally much stronger. So it's a medium, long-term vision, but I think we're very well placed here in Belfast, Northern Ireland, working outwards across Ireland and further afield to be able to build that vision and lead on that vision for our food and for our society.
Excellent. So turning to you, Hans, then, I mean, from your area in terms of the scalable computing expertise, I mean, can you perhaps explain the role scalable computing has to play in delivering some of these exciting plans that we're talking about as part of the GII?
Yes, of course. So scalable computing is about building systems that collect data and that process data. And so we're looking here at systems that are large, that are scalable, and that can service many, many users, that have many sources of inputs, and so on. So in these systems, they are very diverse and very different in the setups and the requirements that they have. So you have systems like cloud environments or data centers where you do a lot of the data storage and processing. There's an aspect of high-performance computing that is required where you build systems that are superficially similar but are actually operating in a very different way internally, that are designed to compute large instances. And so you need these. For instance, when you want to train AI models, then you will very often, for the big models, you will need such systems. There's also tentacles reaching out of those systems for the data collection in the field. And so you will have like farms which are instrumented and where you collect data. When you collect those data sources, you will need to eventually get them into the cloud where you can store them durably and can process them. And so all of these systems are along that path of data collection are within the realm of what we study as well. And so the expectation is that we're going to make a lot of progress there in making systems that are very capable in doing processing, partially in the field, partially in the data center, so that you can improve the quality of data collection, the efficiency by which you can deploy them, and so on.
Excellent. So, I mean, from what I'm hearing, I think, you know, a lot of this is around extracting intelligence for data for health applications, and we've seen your examples, Mark, for agricultural applications, and then we need new sort of computing systems to be able to collate and collect that data effectively, efficiently, and for good, purposes that are good. So I guess, I mean, these are all really exciting, and we're talking about all the great and good things here, but let's turn to maybe perhaps consider some of the challenges we might face here in terms of trying to undertake some of this activity. So perhaps if I start this time with yourself, Nigel, I mean, what do you see as maybe some of the key challenges that we need to overcome to successfully deliver on some of these really exciting initiatives and ideas that we've been discussing?
I think, first of all, it'll be building partnerships. We have excellent partnerships in the field I was describing earlier, but we're going to continue to need to work hard on building partnerships. Imagine an instrumented landscape, which is land that's owned by many different farmers that contribute to that. So building relationships with farmers and with companies across supply chains through to retail, where we access our food, or through to food service, where you access food in restaurants, for example. Connecting that together is a major challenge. And secondly, there will be a very important space across all of what we're discussing today, which is in the area of access to data and data ownership, and frankly, building trust in systems. And fundamentally, I think that's going to be a very big challenge for us to deal with. Thank you.
Your thoughts, Hans, on this?
Yeah, so Nigel actually introduced that very well. So trust in the systems. So I think one of the big challenges we are facing with AI in particular is how it operates and how much we can actually rely on it. So there's a lot of evidence that the current state-of-the-art technologies in terms of deep learning and very complex neural networks that are being used, they have a number of flaws which can potentially be problematic. So we know that they can be discriminating. So depending on the data that you feed it, it will draw certain conclusions. If your data, for instance, does not include a lot of data about certain ethnic groups, then the decisions it will make about that ethnic group by design are limited in terms of how well they work. And that in essence then leads to discrimination, potential bias, and so on. And a lot of these things are central to how these systems operate. And so a lot of people are looking at how can we improve them, how can you work around the problems. But I think beyond that, we also need to think about the people who are using them. Because it's all good and well that you have a computer that gives you a number. What you draw out from that number and how you use it eventually is a person's responsibility. So understanding how these things work is going to be very important for people who are being confronted with them and trying to get the data out of that so that they can estimate and understand where the potential pitfalls are.
Absolutely, yeah. So your thoughts, Mark, on the challenges that need to address?
No, thank you very much. I mean, I think one challenge is scalability, but I think we can actually deal with that. And obviously with the likes of Hans, that's exactly why we're working in this space together. But I think trust and transparency is incredibly important, and particularly in the use of health data. And the way in which we've approached this is very much co-creation with patients and members of the public. And that's the only way really we can be successful. Everybody needs to come along on this journey together. So this needs to be a national conversation in Northern Ireland. We really have a huge opportunity here, but we need to work on it together. And trust and transparency, you need both to build that trust, but also you need to maintain that trust. And one of the things we've done in DataCamp, for example, is very much empowered our patient and public subgroup, and so that they actually take leadership in relation to some of the work that we're doing, and they also have the veto on anything we do. So if our patient and public engagement groups say, no, we don't agree with that piece of work that you're suggesting you'll do, or that contract that you're going to sign, then we won't do it. So it has to be that complete openness, complete transparency. Yes, innovation can be driven within that space as well. And we have some very good examples of that, but it has to be done in that co-creative way and making sure that everybody is on the same page in that journey. And it's a huge opportunity here for Northern Ireland, I think, but we need to have that national conversation, which is starting to happen now.
So yeah, so I guess another challenge that I would see as well in terms of helping us deliver on these exciting initiatives is having the right resource and the skills pipeline in place. And this is something I'd like to get your thoughts on as well. So certainly the Department of Economy's 10x economic vision has talked about the needs for tens of thousands of jobs in the digital, ICT, agri-tech and life and health sciences sectors in order to transform our economy over the next decade. So how do we create the pipeline of skills necessary to help us deliver not only on the GII, but also on this 10x vision? So I think, I'll go to you first this time, Hans, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, and I don't really have an answer to that. So, yeah, so within Queen's, we're already pulling through a very large number of undergraduates in computer science. Whether we need to scale that up, whether we can scale that up, is a very difficult question. So, probably you'd want to look at different ways of education. But really, this is outside of my remit, really.
So, Mark, I'll go over to you. I was just taking an error
Yeah.
message off your face in case you were wondering what I was doing.
No problem at all. Yeah, no, I think it's really important that we get this skills mix right. And I think one of the things is looking to see what is the skills mix we need, what is the skills mix we have at the moment, and also how do we scale, because there's a significant scale as you showed there. So it's a 10x scale in relation to our economy. It's much more than that in relation to the skill set. And I think we have to be imaginative and innovative. I think we have to work with different partners in industry, in academia, in public service, and look at different ways. I don't think just the traditional models of education are going to work in this case. I think we need to look much more at problem solving and setting that as the sort of agenda in terms of training. The best way to learn something, I think we all know this, is to try and solve a problem that you're interested in. Sort of theoretical things don't really help you in that regard. But if you have a problem and if you set a challenge, and then you're looking at ways to solve that challenge, you actually learn a lot more. So I think looking at sort of maybe some non-traditional ways of looking at skills development needs to be done, as well as the complementing the sort of more traditional routes.
I think it's also really important to excite the pipeline at as early a stage as possible. So excite people about these problems and these opportunities within schools, and any opportunity we can to take to do that is really important as well. Your thoughts, Nigel?
There's a really important part of the discussion this afternoon, and I'd just like to pick up a little bit on the schools bit, because I think there's a very important need for our schools, our colleges of further education, and our universities and businesses to be absolutely in one, working through this massive opportunity for Northern Ireland. I think the skills thing is going to be the big space that is going to hamper the delivery through to real economic benefit. But equally, it will be important that we join up skills. We got it here in the panel today, but you need to have that in reality. So in my case, we will still need to have people on the ground who understand the business of farming, but are comfortable engaging in the data space and looking at outputs of data that can help inform decisions on that farm, on that landscape. And so the upskilling and working with others with complementary skills to solve, as Mark described it, to solve it as problems is going to be absolutely critical. And then I think there's a really important bit in around, to use a fishing analogy, at what stage do you reach out to catch the fish, to inform and work with children? And how do you excite young people around the problems and the opportunity to go into educational career pathways that is more to do with problem solving? What age is it? Is it 9, 10, 11, 12? Or is it when you're, as I am, just turned 30? So when is it? And so I think there's some really exciting stuff there that we really need to work hard at.
Oh, absolutely right. I think we need to check the trustworthiness of your data there, Nigel.
There's an error has just come up in my vocabulary, so it's just...
Some of you have touched on this already, and I think it's a really important point. So you've touched on the need for partnerships and different engagements with collaborators in order to achieve some of the exciting breakthroughs we're talking about. So I just wanted to ask, I suppose, the panel about the importance of industry as well as key stakeholder engagement to some of the plans we are envisaging here with the GII. So perhaps if I ask yourself first, Mark, I think it's probably more obvious in your area from a health point of view, but even with other perspectives.
No, absolutely critical, because that's how we innovate and that's how we drive, for example, the development of new drugs, new diagnostics, etc. So one of the things we've been doing is a lot of that stakeholder engagement and looking to develop different types of partnerships, different modes of partnerships. And certainly anybody who is here today who's interested in becoming part of GII, please come and talk to us, because we feel this is a really exciting opportunity, but we're only going to achieve at the level that we want to achieve if we work in partnership. We're not going to do it by simply working on our own. back to the silos comparison that I used earlier on. So that for me is the key. And that's why, I'm really excited working with you, Maya, for example, with your expertise in cybersecurity, which I can see different applications in my space, similarly with Nigel, with Hans. So I think that's that interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, but also transsectoral approach that's going to be the way in which we really drive Northern Ireland forward.
Absolutely. Hans, your thoughts on this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So just in relation to, from your field of expertise, the importance of working with industry or other stakeholder partners.
So, yeah, I mean, so we do a lot of collaboration with industry, and so already. So in order to realize the vision of GI, I think it relates to the 10x economy plans. We have to work with industry because there's already a lot of talent in there, and that's what we are targeting anyway, ultimately. This is not only about creating new technologies, it's also getting it out in the field, getting people to work with them. And so I think the collaboration there with industry is essential to make that transfer happen.
So we do have exciting partnerships in place for the GI already with the likes of Microsoft and NVIDIA, EY and so on. So I think more of this. But as you say, we have experience of this from ECIT already and showing the success that we can achieve by working in collaboration with industry to sort of look at pull through of research, etc. So your thoughts, Nigel?
It's simply just paramount working with industry. I'll just extend it slightly that I sometimes think about it as a diamond, where it's to do with government, to do with society, industry, and ourselves as knowledge providers working together to solve problems. So that co-creation, that partnership is absolutely fundamental to helping society.
Okay, so I have another question for you, but before I do that, just to maybe open it to the floor as well. If anyone has any questions you'd like to panel, maybe ask the panel, maybe think about those now. And I'm just priming you now in case you want to get your thoughts together. It's in relation to something, I'll ask first, just in relation to something, I think some again have mentioned to this, particular yourself, Hans. We talked about extracting intelligence from data using obviously AI and that capability and data analytics capability. And it can provide obviously many benefits, significant benefits for many sectors. So what benefits do you see AI and that capability bringing to your disciplines? So maybe if I ask yourself first, Mark, because I'm conscious you may need to go soon.
Yeah, no, AI is absolutely critical to the work we do. For example, in terms of identifying particular patterns in relation to, for a disease, colorectal cancer, bowel cancer that I work on, and we've used that to identify which patients will respond or won't respond to particular treatments based on their genomic makeup. So there's a very good practical example that we've used and brought it right from discovery into using it from a clinical perspective. So we see that as being a really important part of how we can work together. And I think one of the challenges is going to be scale. So how do we scale up? And I think the other opportunity we have in Northern Ireland, a population of 2 million, we can actually do something at a population level, which is not easy to do for a lot of other countries. So that sort of smallness actually helps us in a way in this regard, because we're actually able to do something that will potentially positively influence the whole population.
Excellent, thank you. Do you need to go to your talk or?
Probably in a couple of minutes.
Okay, you're able to stay with us another while, that's great. So Hans, certainly in your area, you're looking really at developing the compute capability table to kind of facilitate some of this AI capability. How do you see this developing going forward?
So AI is affecting a lot of things going on in the design of computing systems. So one of the effects we are seeing is that GPUs, so graphics processing units, are increasingly used for computing. So these are basically big, massively parallel chips that can process a lot of data in parallel, which is needed for a lot of AI models. And so, for instance, if you look at the top 500 lists of the biggest supercomputers in the world, then the majority of those are now being powered by GPUs. And if you look at the ratio between the compute performed by GPUs in those systems and the compute performed by your conventional processors, then the GPUs massively outperform anything else. So that's where all the effort is. And then in the wake of that, for AI, there's also a large number of startups which are designing specific hardware for accelerating these models, so for training these models and for inference. So Google has been doing that for many years, but there's also startups in the UK, for instance, GraphCore. There's other startups like, for instance, Cerebras, which build huge chips. I mean, not your normal chip is a few centimeters square. They build chips with 20 centimeters diameter. They're all very exciting technological developments that are going to help make AI a reality in many applications.
That's good. And Nigel, your thoughts? I know you kind of alluded to this earlier in terms of just extracting intelligence and the importance of that in your discipline.
Yeah, like I just think the opportunity is very, very large indeed, and there's already quite a lot going on in the space. Mark gave a real-world example from the cancer side. Equally, on the agricultural side, there's some really good examples of taking data from technology and using that to make improvements in the production of our food. And I just see that really accelerating very substantially over the next 5 to 10 years.
Excellent. So let me open it to the floor. Do we have any questions from the floor for our panel members today? Okay. Yeah. Yourself?
Hi, thanks. That was really interesting discussion. I'm just wondering, where will the data being used for this initiative sit? And who will, sort of take responsibility for that, or will it be joint effort, or, will there be a set group of people who will, take care of that side of things?
So it's a very good question. So where will the data sit in terms of the data we're collating? I don't know if anyone wants to take that question. Maybe Mark?
Yeah, no, I can take that. So really important question. So essentially the data will only sit in areas where there is data where there's actually appropriate controls and restrictions in place. So what will happen is, people will be approved to actually work on different data sets, but the data won't move. The analysis will be brought to the data. The primary data will stay in situ as to where the data custodians actually take care of it. But the analysis will be done, and then the analysis then will be brought out with the results to do that. But one of the things, we've looked at this a lot in terms of different systems, and we feel that's the most appropriate, that allows you to do effective research and innovation, but also in a very responsible way.
And just to add, some of my own research expertise is looking at the being able to analyze data while keeping it private and not leaking any information or any sort of metadata from that. So there are technologies now known as privacy-preserving technologies and methodologies that we're working on to make it, they do exist, but they're just not practical in dealing with the scale of data that we have, to be able to perform some of the analysis in real time. And that's some of the areas of research that we're actually targeting right now and hoping to collaborate with Mark on.
Yeah, no, that's why we're really excited about that, because that gives the best of both worlds. We bring the health data science expertise, Maya brings the cybersecurity expertise, and that really brings privacy protecting software and approaches that are, state of the art. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go now and speak at the other conference. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay,
so
bye.
Professor Lawler has to leave us to speak at another conference, so appreciate him joining us today. Okay, well, I think that, thank you so much for a question, really, really important question, very valid. So to finish off, I suppose I would just like to ask the remaining panelists, I suppose, if you want to give a takeaway message from today's discussion and our exciting plans for the GII, what would that be? So maybe yourself first, Nigel.
I just think we're already living in a period of transformation in data, and some will say data overload, but we're going to see that really exponentially go forward in society and right across all the different spheres that we operate in. But for me, the excitement is about the translation of that data into intelligence, into knowledge that can make our world a better place for us to live and a better place for us to enjoy, and education and health and so on. Fundamentally, it's that translation into knowledge and impact. So it's very exciting.
Excellent. Hans, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree with Nigel. And well, also, so AI has been described as a transformative technology, which means that it can impact on all sectors of the economy and change how we manufacture, change how we communicate, change how we do health, and so on. So it's very important that people get on board with this in one way or another. And so it's important, I think, to know that the most basic skill that anybody needs working with AI is what is actually described as common sense, in my view. So there are lots of mathematics behind AI, but you don't always need to know it. In first instance, it's common sense. And basically, there's a career involving AI for everybody, in my view.
Excellent, excellent message. So from my point of view, just to sum up, I guess, as director of ECIT, we have research expertise at the moment in looking at the secure connected intelligence piece. And what's really exciting for me about this GII initiative is that opportunity to undertake multidisciplinary research and see where we can help our colleagues, Nigel and Mark, to use our underpinning technology to solve some of their grand challenges, both in the agri-food sector and also in the health and life sciences sector. And that, for me, is particularly exciting. So my message would be for everyone to kind of watch this space to see some of the exciting breakthroughs we'll have from GII as we develop. And as my colleagues here have hinted and alluded to as well, if you are interested in any of these topics and areas, please come join us, please come talk to us. Either undertake some of these opportunities as students in terms of gaining the skills to help us in this, or partner with us if you already have the skill set and to support us in this really, really exciting initiative. So thank you to my panelists as well, and thank you to all of you for joining in for the panel session. Thank you.
Thank you.